I'm a little nervous to talk about this one. Or is she an unreliable narrator? Can we trust her with her jokes? Her Caricano, very spicy. And I like Asian markets. Exactly the writer I wanted to be. What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla and I like to make videos about reading and fitness and all the things I do to take care of myself, all while encouraging you to do the same. So if you are a returning viewer, you're probably like, you probably saw the title and were confused because up to this point my channel has been mostly fitness challenges. I actually started doing like motherhood content, realized that was pretty bad for my mental health. I decided to focus more on getting my own life back outside of being a mother. That led me to like fitness challenges and getting active again and trying to get back into shape. If someone were to ask me like what I do for fun, what is my favorite pastime, what do I do when I have time to myself, that would be reading. And so it seemed kind of strange that I had this platform, albeit a small one, and I'm not using it to talk about honestly my one interest. Like my one thing I really care about. So if you came for the fitness videos and you also like reading, I encourage you to stick around. If you're here for the first time because you want to hear about reading, please subscribe. So today's video, I'm going to be sharing the books that made me fall in love with reading again. I went to college for creative writing and comparative literature. That experience that was meant to make me better at those things actually made me dislike it. That can happen a lot when you take something you enjoy and you make it into work. These books that I'm going to talk about today, for one reason or another, maybe you want to get into reading and one of these sounds interesting to you. Maybe you're in a slump, like you enjoy reading but you just need something different, or maybe you just like the sound of me talking, which I highly doubt, but there could be someone. If you watch BookTube or BookTok or anything like that, then you're probably used to seeing stacks and stacks of books in every thumbnail, and I will be posting the picture of the book like up here as I'm talking about them. Every book I'm going to talk about was from the library and has since gone back for someone else to enjoy. So hopefully it doesn't bother anyone to not have a physical book here. First book I want to talk about is The Push. Strangely enough, I feel like The Push is super similar to Verity by Colleen Hoover, and yet everyone talks about Verity, and I have not seen a single person that I watch on YouTube talk about The Push. The Push and Verity are both kind of psychological thrillers, sort of anchored in motherhood. I think what makes them different is that Verity has like this kind of romantic subplot, whereas The Push does not. The Push is a story of Blythe, and she kind of had this really difficult childhood and a really strained relationship with her mother, and then she finds out she's pregnant and she's so excited to like have this relationship with her child that she never had with her own mother. And then as soon as her daughter is born, she kind of starts to feel like her daughter is not normal, that there's something wrong with her, and the whole book is you kind of following along Blythe, trying to figure out, is there something really off about her daughter, or is she an unreliable narrator? Can we trust her? Is she like too traumatized to be a mother? And while you're learning about Blythe and her relationship with her daughter, you're also getting flashbacks to Blythe's mother. And then that name is so hard for me. Blythe's mother and her grandmother, and you're just kind of seeing what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a bad mother, how that can really do a number on your children. And I think I enjoyed this book so much because I read it shortly after becoming a mother, and I was just like shook, honestly, as I was reading it. And it was one of the ones where I finished it and I immediately went to Reddit and was like, The Push ending explained, and you know, got lost in that rabbit hole. Like, it messes with your head a lot and it's so good in that way. The next one is American Dirt. I'm a little nervous to talk about this one because it's pretty controversial. I don't know how I heard about this book or why it ended up on my TBR list, but it was hailed as like the next great American classic, and so that's like a huge proclamation, and I felt like I needed to read it. It's caused quite a bit of controversy because The book is about Lydia and Luca, a mom and a son, and they are Mexican, and they are escaping from their home in Acapulco to the United States after their entire family is murdered. That's not a spoiler, that's like the premise of the book. It happens right in the first chapter. But the author herself is white, I believe. So there was this whole conversation sparked, is she drawing attention to the plight of migrants and, giving them a voice, or is her book kind of taking a platform away from people who could be telling their own story? When I read this book, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is what every single person from South America goes through as they're coming to the US. That's not what I was thinking. I thought it was a really incredibly tragic work of fiction. I'm not taking the book as a piece of research. The book has also been called trauma porn, which is not great and doesn't make me feel happy that I enjoyed it so much. It is really, really sad and devastating, and I cried so hard at the end. Everything in it is heightened. Every character is kind of filling this mold of like the worst thing that could happen. And so in that way, I get that it's unrealistic, but I just found it very, very captivating. It's kind of the same thing about The Push. I had just become a mother when I read this book, and so the relationship between Lydia and Luca and her concern about whether this experience would, ruin his life. Would he ever be able to be a child again after going through this experience? Like at that point in my life, my son was still a baby, and Luca in the book, I believe he's 8 years old. And so it just made me feel very thoughtful, I guess, about what the future looked like with me and my own child, and, the fact that he was going to grow up, and like what kind of childhood was I going to provide for him. And so, the book is rated really highly. I believe it's like 4.4 stars on Goodreads, and for as much criticism as it's faced, I thought it was a really beautiful book. The author herself, I actually Googled her a bit afterwards and found out that she has a memoir written about her cousins that were murdered, and I read that, and ooh, that was a doozy. I cannot believe I've never heard about that case on like any true crime podcast. It was absolutely wild and very sad. We're talking about American Dirt. I would recommend reading it just because it's a really captivating work of fiction, but read it as a piece of fiction. Don't read it as your education about the migrant community. The next one, much lighter, no controversy. Emily Henry's Beach Read. Oh my God. How do I say this? Emily Henry is exactly the writer I wanted to be, and I thought I could be when I went to college to be a writer. Her wit, her jokes, her characters, her storylines, everything is just exactly what I need from a modern romance book. She is so funny. Like, my husband does not care about reading. He doesn't want to hear about my books, but we were in bed and I was laughing my head off reading Emily Henry. I was like, please, 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 let me just tell you what's happening. Because he's like, how can you laugh that hard at a book? He just doesn't get it. Read him the page of like the jokes she made, and he started laughing. She is just so witty and so funny. And Beach Read is actually not even my favorite Emily Henry book, but it's the first one I read by her. So the book is about January and Augustus. They're both writers. It's not really enemies to lovers. I think it's more like forced proximity. And they met before at like a writer's retreat, and they end up neighbors in this small town for the summer. And she is a romance writer and he is I don't know what he is. I feel like in the book he's called like an American literature writer, American classic, something like that. But basically he's writing a book about a cult, and they're both kind of in a writing slump, and so they make this deal that he will write her genre and she will write his genre, and like I think it's whoever finishes first or whoever sells there's some competition aspect, I don't remember. To help the other person write the book, they have to go on these like adventures to learn about the other person's style. So she takes him on all these like cutesy dates. He takes her on his like kind of intense research trips to learn about this cult. It's a romance book. Like, you can guess what happens, but I mean, Emily Henry could write about like paint drying and I would probably have a laughing attack. So it's amazing. The next one is Normal People by Sally Rooney. Again, a little controversial. Some people really don't like Sally Rooney books, and all her books are kind of a similar style. And the main criticism I've heard is that she doesn't use quotation marks around her dialogue. And I'll be honest, I read all of her books and did not even notice that until somebody on BookTube pointed it out. I guess it's like a personal preference. If you can't get past it, I can see how her books would be annoying, but for me, it didn't matter. But Normal People is by far my favorite, and the TV adaptation on Hulu is like amazing. I am definitely going to go back and watch it. So the story is about Marianne and Connell. Ugh, I love the name Connell. I would definitely, if I ever have another boy, I would name him Connell, but I don't think my husband can pronounce it correctly. But anyway, so it's about Marianne and Connell, and Marianne is kind of like a black sheep. You know, she's like an outsider at school. She's like very, very smart, but also stands up for herself when people are mean to her. And Connell is like, you know that phrase where it's like, you can be in a room full of people and feel totally alone? That is Connell to a T. He's like this athlete and he has a lot of friends, but he feels like he doesn't really fit in with his own friends. And so Marianne's family is very wealthy and she has all these family issues, and Connell's mom is Marianne's family's housekeeper. And so that's how they kind of meet. They get together, and the story is just kind of following them, like the ups and downs of their teenage romance, and then college, and then after college when they're like adults but still in each other's lives. I thought it was so beautiful and so realistic. Some people are like really frustrated by the communication in the book, and they're like, all of these issues could be solved if they just talk to each other. And to me, it's like, get off your high horse. Like, who doesn't have communication issues in their relationships? The reason romance books are fun is because the men and the women, honestly, in those books are unrealistic. They're like, everyone is like 6'5" and has chiseled abs and like a huge personality. Marianne and Connell are not like that. They are real. Like, I feel like I know these people, and that is something so special about Sally Rooney's writing. She makes her characters so believable. I would be shocked if they are not all based on people she knows in real life, because I just don't know how you dream up a life for a character and make them so average and yet so entertaining. Okay, the next series is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorn and Roses. I threw it in here because it's a series. When you read a book you like and then it's part of a series, that's amazing. And also kind of overwhelming, but it's like, you know, you have all these books that you're going to enjoy as you get through them because you enjoyed the first one so much. And let me tell you, A Court of Thorn and Roses is not even the best book in that series. I still have to read the last two, but I am just taking my sweet time because I don't want it to be over. So for me, there was two reasons I was putting off A Court of Thorn and Roses. The first one is that I knew it was fantasy and I was like, that's kind of cheesy. And then the second reason was because my library at least keeps it in the young adult section, and I felt honestly kind of embarrassed going in there. But after I've read it, I don't know why it's in that section, because it is very spicy, especially the second and the third books. So there was a lot of emphasis on the adult and the young adult, I'm guessing. If you like romance, you will like this book. The fantasy part of it is totally, it's like so smooth and so easy to understand and not silly at all, in my opinion. Okay, so the first book is about Feyre. I've heard so many reviews and everyone is like, how do you say her name? And I remember looking it up and I think it was Feyre. Feyre is a human and she takes care of her family and she kills this wolf, and it turns out that this wolf is actually Fae. And so to pay for that death, that murder, she gets like taken captive by Tamlin, who is a lord, I believe, in the fairy world. And from there, it's basically like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So it's a love story, like there's no beating around that, but it is so good. You get so invested in all the different characters. I'm pretty sure everyone loves Lucian. Like, does anyone not like him? It's so dark at the end, super good. Like, as soon as I finished it, I read the whole thing on my plane ride back from Thailand. I was like, I need the second one, I need it, I'm fiending. It's a great book. The next one is a totally different genre. So like you can see in this video, I'm bouncing around. And the next one is a memoir. And I actually really enjoy memoirs. That was one of my favorite classes I took in my writing program in college. This one is Crying in H Mart. And I believe that I put it on my reading list because I liked the name and I like Asian markets. And I was like, okay, Crying in H Mart, find out why. It's written by Michelle Zauner, I believe is how you say her name, aka Japanese Breakfast. And it is her story of growing up in like rural Oregon as a Korean American person. She really uses like Korean food and Asian markets in general, H Mart, as a metaphor for her relationships with her family and with her like biracial identity, bicultural identity. And it's so beautiful, and I don't think this is a spoiler. I mean, the main focus of the book is that her mom is sick and her mom is dying, and it's not a happy book at all. It's a very sad book. I'm not eloquent enough to describe what she's going through in the best words, but for me, it was just truly fascinating. I mean, my husband's from Thailand, my son is half Asian, and this is something I've thought about a lot for him, growing up with families that speak different languages, families that live in different countries, families that are, the cultures could not be more different, and just trying to think about how this could affect him in the future, and then hearing her story of how at times she felt so far removed, but also so embraced by different cultures. It was really beautiful, and she is kind of a celebrity, and so it's like, it's not every day that somebody who is famous for something else, her being in a band, you get to hear about this really personal and tragic part of their life, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And I have one more. The last one that I put on here because I consumed it as an audiobook. I am the person who was always like, I want physical books. I am not reading an ebook. An audiobook? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I felt like I was a little bit pretentious about reading books in print. My tune has changed. I'm actually getting a Kindle for Christmas, and I'm so excited about it. I just feel like in my busy life, I need to take books however I can get them. And so I decided to give audiobooks a chance. And for my very first audiobook, I chose Daisy Jones and the Six, and everyone says the audiobook is amazing, and I thought, okay, if I'm gonna try an audiobook, let's try this one. And I have to say I was a little worried because I think I'm in the like 0.05% of people who thought Malibu Rising wasn't pure gold. I do like other Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, but I was just hesitant about this. So Daisy Jones and the Six is about sex, drugs, rock and roll, and the 70s, pretty much. Daisy Jones is the main character. She's a rock star, and she joins this established rock group called the Six. And the book is just like going through their career as a band, but it's formatted in the way that they're being interviewed. They're all separated as they're answering the questions. You're getting like so many different perspectives about the same event, the same band, the same timeline, from everyone, and everyone's story is different, and it's like you get to know everyone's personalities by how they respond to certain events. And the best part about it, the second I turned it on, I was like, is that Jennifer Beals? Jennifer Beals is the voice of Daisy Jones, and her voice is like velvet. It's so fantastic. And then Pablo Schreiber, he is the voice of Billy, and I was like, oh, I like Pablo. So it was just like this fantastic cast, and they have all these wonderful actors whose voices you recognize reading the book, and they're putting so much feeling and emotion and heart into the reading. It's not just a book anymore. It's like watching a movie without a picture. It's so fantastic. I was enthralled. And since then, I've listened to like 3 or 4 audiobooks, and I've not really enjoyed any of them. I find it so hard to like stay focused and to not get distracted, and then I have to rewind and I don't know where I left off. But Daisy Jones and the Six, when consumed as an audiobook, was fantastic. Highly recommend. So that is it. Those are my books that made me love reading again and have kept me really going this last year, as I've read 60, how many did I say? 67? I think it's 67 books, and I'm about to finish one today, so it's going to be 68. If you disagree with any of my opinions, or if you agree with them, leave that in the comments. Let's talk about it. If you liked this video, please, please, please let me know. I mean, I'm probably going to make more either way, because this is the most fun I've had filming a video in probably the entire time I've been doing YouTube. I could seriously sit here for hours and talk about books, and I plan to do so. So if you enjoyed this, please let me know, because it will validate my desire to talk about books, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.